No, like obviously, as some people coming into this industry, there's a lot of us are looking for investors, right? And then we know we need all these things on the back end, but it's like, how, if we can't afford a lawyer, how do we navigate to get to the point where we can do that? Like, is there instances where like you guys work towards a goal, and then if you can't meet that within the certain time frames, then you just like part ways, or like how does that work?
Yeah, it just all depends on what the term sheet states. And like I said, the term sheet is going to be your Bible no matter what. And that's what's going to designate how the parties proceed moving forward. So in a term sheet, you can stipulate a timeline. You can say that this term sheet will expire after X amount of days or months. And then you could also stipulate in there that if the parties don't reach a definitive agreement by X date, that this term sheet is going to expire. So there's various different ways that you can do that, but it always has to be, the main important thing, it has to be right in writing and signed by both parties.
Right.
Now, now I'm sure there's entrepreneurs listening to this have who are coming out of other businesses. They have an attorney, but this is we're talking cannabis. It's not like other businesses. So do people just screw themselves if they don't use a cannabis attorney for their cannabis business?
Not necessarily, because this business, there's so many there's so many aspects of this business that is touches so many different areas of the law. Like there's intellectual property that we've talked about, and there are IP lawyers out there that just, specialize in that one area. There's there's attorneys who deal solely with contracts and partnerships and corporations, like corporate attorneys. There's also attorneys who deal with litigation and commercial disputes. So it's not, cannabis isn't really like a one size fits all type of thing. It is better to have one because of the cannabis regulations, especially if you're doing the corporate aspect of this, because it has to remain, whatever you're doing, whatever transaction you're facing, you're going to have to make sure that it is compliant with the regulations. And an attorney who doesn't, specialize in cannabis and don't know much about the regulations, there's a chance that they might fail to, stipulate and oversee that important aspect of the transaction.
Now, out of curiosity, you already had a established career as an attorney. You didn't have to go into cannabis. Why did you? Why? Why are you a cannabis attorney?
So it's funny because I didn't smoke weed until I was like 25 years old.
I was
I
thinking
did when
the
I
same
was
thing.
I did when I was a teenager, and that's when it was illegal, and I was under the age of 21. Then took a long hiatus. COVID came around, and I'm not an alcohol drinker at all. So I'm like, stress of law school. I'm like, I need something to help me relax that is not alcohol and not other illicit substances and face that whole. So I'm like, let me, okay. And then also, me and my friend, it was always during COVID, you had so much free time, and we came up with the fact. I'm like, what do you always wanted to do? What's on your bucket list? And I was like, I want to make cannabis, or I want to make pot brownies. So then that's how I got like reintroduced to cannabis. And then I was like, when we were baking together, I'm like, this would be fun if I was an attorney that could guide people on this and help them to say, okay, this is legal and what's not legal. I had no idea what cannabis law was even about. Then also my younger brother, he's autistic. He was diagnosed and placed on medical marijuana, and that really helped out his symptoms a lot. So that also made me have more faith in the plant, that this was, a holistic approach instead of a Western approach to things. And I really advocate for those kind of approaches rather than, Western types of medicine. So that's basically the nuts and bolts how I got into it. Then, or why I got into it, I should say. But then it was, I would say, the towards the end of 2021 when cannabis legalized in both New Jersey and New York, and I had no idea what cannabis law was about. So I tried to find internships or an attorney to mentor me on cannabis law, because it was so new. and the only thing that was existing at the time were medical treatment facilities. It was really hard to find an attorney that I could work with. But fate had it otherwise. I ended up finding an attorney who I could work underneath, and I submitted the first round of applications for a bunch of different licensees, and the story goes from there.
Oh, that's great. That's funny too,
That's
because that's what
beautiful.
I tell everybody in this industry too. It's a lot more purpose driven. I feel like, just because same thing. I started later on in life. I wasn't introduced to it until I was like in my late college years, and then it was just like, okay, I didn't think it was for me, because also my friends smoked with grabba, so I got hit heavy on my first tries, and I was just like, I don't know if I could do this. And then it just got to the point where it's like, okay, it's not really a social thing for me. It's more of like, okay, you need, this is the only thing, like calming your brain down at the end of the day, like helping you stay asleep throughout the night, and it's like, okay, how do I advocate for this on a more wellness, um on more on the wellness side, rather than, oh, this is just a leisure thing, this is what everybody does and I'm doing it because somebody else did it. There's, and I wanted to take that negative stigma away from it too. So it's great, like hearing other people like, no, this is this there's reasons for it, like, we're advocating for a real, like something that's revolutionary. This is not a
Mhm.
little thing.
So, Natalie, in what surprised you about cannabis entrepreneurs? The ones that have come to you, what surprised you? What were your "I didn't see that coming" type of moments?
I guess just how laissez-faire everything is, which is also nice in a lot of aspects. But also, what I really, really love about this industry, I really wouldn't say it's surprising, but I really love the fact that the cannabis industry is so diverse. Because
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with just white men in business suits. I'm dealing with so many different types of people and so many different types of personalities. And that's what I really appreciate about this industry.
Yeah, that was another thing that I respected too, when I was starting to come in and going to the conferences and seeing the different conventions. It was just like everybody, from all walks of life had different things. Like, we have dispensary owners of different races, which is great.
Mhm.
People like are moving through like restrictions that we thought we had. We see people capitalizing on it. So it's like, that's been great to see.
So, what is the biggest mistake that you see cannabis startups making?
So one of the biggest mistakes I see is that they do handshake deals. So they're looking to
Yeah.
bring on an investor, or they're looking to sell their products, and these supply agreements are handshake deals. There's ambiguities about the terms. There's really no terms. It's just like, all right, I want to do business with you. We're gonna shake hands and carry on. And then that becomes such a huge problem later down the road, because once money gets involved, that's when the fights begin.
Right.
And what type of missteps do you see established cannabis companies? Because I would think that when people come to you, it's because there was a misstep or a mistake.
Hmm.
So with the established ones, what is their most common misstep?
Yeah, so lucky enough so far, there's a mix of clientele that I basically counsel. It's those who already came to me because, or those are coming to me because I made a mistake that they need help to rectify. And there's those that, take the approach that I like to follow or that I keep on preaching, is that they want to make sure they're doing it the right way from the beginning. And those that have came to me that have already had problems, it ends up being, a really long and costly process to rectify some of those issues. So, like I said before, make sure that you have an attorney, even though it's not, you don't need to have one per se. It's always recommended to have a cannabis attorney. And also, what we were talking about before, like protecting your brand and protecting your trade secrets, and that sort of stuff that's proprietary to you, that you don't want the masses knowing. you should have an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement, or also, contracts that have non-competes in them.
So, do non-competes and NDAs hold up in court?
Yes, they do. To some degree, they do.
And then
Now,
that's with both parties signing.
That is with both parties signing, yes. And
Okay.
that's why also in the term sheet, that's why you make binding provisions such as non-compete and also, non-disclosures like the confidentiality and the exclusivity provisions.
do these have to be notarized? Do the signatures have to be notarized?
No, they do not.
That's good to know.
Now, so who generates the contracts? So, Sophie's going to be dealing with wholesalers, and also dispensaries. So, going into a dispensary with your product, it, I would think that would need a contract and not a handshake. Who writes
Mhm.
the contracts? Does the wholesaler or the white label person? Does the dispensary, or is these Sophia's responsibilities?
No, it could be the responsibility of either party. When two people come together and they create, a contract or they create an agreement of some sort that needs to be memorialized, they can actually delegate who's responsible for drafting those agreements. Like I represent cannabis entrepreneurs who don't have a lot of money for an attorney. And they say, well, I need you to draft up the term sheet in ways that I can be protected, and that's normally good for a start. But in that term sheet, we'll actually delegate the responsibility of drafting the definitive agreements to the other side to kind of reduce their attorney's fees a little bit and equal out the costs.
Okay.
So, in doing the business plan and the cost projections, their attorney fees should be included in this. So, in relationship to doing a realistic cost projections, is 10,000 a reasonable budget for an attorney, or are we talking closer to 20,000, or am I just totally missing the mark on that?
Yeah, when you're looking to put in your financial pro formas about attorney's fees, it's always good to try to give a realistic number and exceed that amount. So typically, from start to finish, if you're just using an attorney for the licensing, without any sort of hiccups along the way, and doing other tasks, just solely alone the licensing, you're looking at like $50,000 plus. And that
Oh my
also
gosh.
yeah, that
Oh,
also
I'm just
depends on like the way that the lawyer is charging. So some lawyers, like we said before, they can charge flat fees, they can charge, a monthly amount, they charge retainers.
I just said, oh my God, because I was so far off on that number. I wasn't even close.
That was good. Like, as soon as like you said number, I was like 50,000 sounds like a sweet spot.
Wait, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I missed what the 50,000 was for because my phone stupidly died. Sorry,
I
guys.
was like, you must have died on the phone. That's the only way.
I know. I literally just ran. I'm currently outside a gas station. I was at a dispensary, did a little sample, got a bunch of pink samples, dropping off, and then I went to. So yeah, this is my
Yeah,
life. Welcome to the life of me.
right.
But I got a charger, so we're good. But
So my
yeah, I'm so
question,
sorry. What's
my
the fifty
question,
thousand for? Sorry.
attorneys, in the business plan, what figure would you put in there would you budget for attorneys? And I was very far off. I went 10 to 20,000. And Natalie was saying, 50,000 is realistic.
She's not
But I'm not.
wrong. It's true because I noticed like I did a lot of my legal battles, a lot of attorneys do if you have a very strong case and an attorney is very interested in your case and everything that you have, um they may work for on a contingency for depending on, usually the number that I hear is a third. And when they're getting a third of something, they're getting like that third is somewhat equivalent to at least 50 to $100,000
Right.
of of earnings. So that's usually like the number that I do hear. And then like also if you think about it, bless you, like attorney fees, it does add up, like, just something as like I had this one, just figuring out if I can use an audio in a song a long time ago, and it was like we had to do all the research of like, the background music, because I borrowed a song from I did like a partnership with Johnny Mercer, so I had to make sure that like, the I was giving credit to the right foundation and all of that, and just all of those legal fees alone, just like it felt like only 3 days of work was like $7,000. And it's true. Like it was a lot of work that he did, though. He had to go through all the work, like listen to the music, go through the right writers, the properties. So it costs a lot because they do a lot, and it is very important because I know it sounds like a lot of money, but when you're making big business moves, that type of money is like like
Change.
a small cost. Yeah, because like when you're working with $50,000 lawyer fees, you're most likely moving like $2 million, or like you're moving like $100,000 or $1 million. Like you're doing a lot. Like you're doing a lot in business and in money and in moves.
Yeah, in order to make money, you have to spend money. And every time I have a potential client call me and say, hey, I want to open up a cannabis business, I give them the reality of things. I say, hey, look, you're going to be in the negatives for years. You are going to have to constantly spend and spend and spend for, an amount of years, not even days, not months, years. You're going to have to get a solidify a lease agreement, or you're going to have to purchase property, and that property is going to be sitting there while you are spending money on it until you solidify these transactions, until you get the licensing. And that adds up over a period of years, let me tell you. So I tell them this, and plus it is a highly regulated industry. I tell them this isn't your mom and pop ice cream parlor down the street. This is a highly regulated industry, and with that comes a lot of expenses.
Yeah.
So in order for you to end up making money and achieving your dreams, you're going to have to be spending that in order for